Hey everybody, hey! Hey, there we go. There we are. How are you? Welcome everybody. My name is Ian Hill. This is a live coaching session. Ian, where's the set? Well, what's going on with the set? We take the set down because now we're just having an informal chat. We've got directors and executive leaders in 25 departments and organizations and agencies all across North America, and we're just gathering. Gathering for what? Have a chat. If you remember back, the learning model, building the public sector one leader at a time. The strategy here is we're going to establish or reestablish the public sector in its noble and honorable and prominent role. And we're going to do it one leader at a time. Learning the leadership approaches and competencies that the times require. And the learning model is pretty simple. We introduce a concept and then we unpack it for 3 weeks. Well, now we're in the middle of the first 3 weeks. So we stop the bus and we have a dialogue. Well, how can we have a dialogue? Funny that you ask. You noticed in the email that I sent to you, I gave you a bunch of different ways that you're going to be able to dialogue with us. So today I take an hour of my day, you take time out of your day, and we have a chat where we unpack or you ask questions. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can ask questions that might fit your style. So the first way, put those up on the screen, Keith. So the first way that you could ask questions, if your style is Facebook, you might go to your smartphone and you can go to that Facebook page, Building the Public Sector. Facebook/Building the Public Sector, and you could post your question on Facebook, just like they did earlier for the emerging leaders. Or, if you're so inclined, you're a Twitter person, you tweet, you could send a tweet to ask your question, and there's the handle right there on your screen. Or if you're so inclined and you're a little bit more comfortable with texting, you could text us a question. 775-230-4535. Or you could email in a question if that's more comfortable for you at questions@thechangingpoint.com. Or finally, right below me, you could put in your question right there in the chat box. Now, some of you are sitting in rooms with 5 and 8 and 10 or whatever people. And there's a laptop and there's an LCD projector and it's projecting it up on the screen. So it might not be as conducive to walk over to the computer and put in the chat box your question. But you could just take out your phone and send a question, text, Facebook, email, whatever. You also might not feel very comfortable. Maybe you have a question that's, a little sensitive and you don't want anybody to know that you've asked it. Well, then just say, don't tell anybody I asked it. Or text it, because it's just a phone number to us. We don't know who's asking it. If you ask it via email, make sure you say, hey, don't tell anybody who I am if you don't want anybody to know who you are. So, Ian, how are you going to gather all those questions? I'm not. Because I have a handy-dandy sidekick. Everybody needs a handy-dandy sidekick. So we have a handy-dandy sidekick. His name is Jeff Fast. Everybody say, hi, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
There's Big
I'm
Jeff.
not sure how handy I'm going to be, but
you're dandy.
I'm pretty dandy.
Very dandy. And so he's got his computers, he's got phones, he's got all kinds of things there, and he's going to sift through all the questions that come in. And you say, Ian, what's going on with the set? Well, we took the formal set down. We're just sitting in a studio, hanging out for the next hour. But the point of this is to be able to have a dialogue. We introduce some concepts, we dialogue out those concepts. You have all those different ways that you can ask questions. Now, some of you actually read the email that was sent to you, and you already sent in some questions. So we already have some questions. But at any time, you can ask a question or make a comment, and Jeff will read them on air. Now look, before we go any further, there was a bet. A bet. A girl named Erica made a bet with me. Erica is up in Oregon, Washington County, Oregon. And she bet me on a football game. You see, the University of Oregon played Stanford University last night. Erica was a little cocky. Erica really believed that Oregon would crush the University of Stanford. And so she sent me a note about a lot of things. But part of it was, hey, you want to bet? And I was like, sure. And so we bet. And if you know anything about college athletics, you know that last night Oregon was defeated by Stanford. And so we've got a picture. Oh, we don't have a picture. I just heard and was told that the picture's not working. So we'll get the picture working. Because the bet that she lost was that she had to wear a Stanford sweatshirt and paint on her face the Stanford tree, the pine tree. And that she had to wear that all day at work today. And that I would show it nationally, Erica losing the bet. Now, you might be saying to yourself, if you're in Baton Rouge, that maybe you'd like to bet me. I'd be happy to bet all of you Tigers in Baton Rouge that might be LSU fans, because Alabama is going to whoop your you-know-what. Or you might be in Columbia, Missouri, and you want to bet me. Or you might be in any one, Ames, Iowa. But we got Oklahoma, all you good people, Oklahoma City. We got all kinds of people in all kinds of college towns or in towns with sports. You want to bet me? I'm happy to bet. And we can come up with whatever the wager is. See, the wager was this, that she was going to have to dress up, but I would have to dress up. I'd have to do the whole broadcast dressed up in whatever she said. So, shoot me your bet. We'll go for it. And as soon as we get the picture of Erica ready, we'll pull it up and we will show it to you. All right. So questions. Remember 10 days or so ago, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, we introduced a concept. The concept that we started to introduce was that the times they had changed and they were different than they hadn't been in the past. And if we wanted to take the organization to another level, you as an executive leader, if you wanted to take the organization to another level, then it was going to be about the development of informal and formal leaders. That if you wanted to be highly successful, you had to develop formal and informal leaders. And I called it organizational leadership capacity. That when organizational leadership capacity was high, good things happened. When organizational leadership capacity was low, bad things happened. That it was both the formal and the informal leader that made things go. And I gave that to you in the form of a diagram, right? I gave it to you in the form of a diagram. And I said that this was the stated mission of your department. I'm going to move this way. There we go. That this was the stated mission of your department. But within that, oftentimes, we had a lot of this going on. Right? A lack of alignment. If you want to have a great department today, you've got to have alignment. Everybody needs to know the goal. Everybody needs to know the role. And everybody needs to know what winning is. That was the key to gaining alignment. And that when your back was out of alignment, it hurt. And that when your car was out of alignment, it cost a lot. And I made the case that departments get out of alignment. So that you, as the executive leader, had to create an environment that provided the opportunity, provided the opportunity for alignment to occur. Because it was these informal leaders throughout your department that really dictated the success or failure of your department. That 30-year employee who's not on board. That 5-year employee that's not on board. Whose arrow is going this way. They really dictate the success or failure of your department. And frankly, it's the arrow furthest away from you that dictates the success or failure of your department. So we said that in today's day and age, if we're going to build the public sector one leader at a time, we had to build these informal leaders. And that to do that, you as the executive leader had to create an environment where this alignment could occur. And that was the whole premise of what we were doing. But that started with you. Do you exhibit the leadership approaches that will successfully bring into alignment a bunch of different people with a bunch of different backgrounds, with a bunch of different talents, experience, and interests? Do you have the ability to do that? Do you have the skills necessary to gain that alignment? And here's the caveat for those of you that are directors or executive leaders, not a mid-level leader who's taking this program. You also got to get alignment of stakeholders outside the four walls of your department. You've got to get alignment of elected officials. You've got to get alignment of the business leaders. You've got to get alignment of the people in the Rotary Club. You've got to get alignment of somebody who runs has a regional governmental entity or has a state or provincial governmental entity or maybe even a federal governmental entity. You've got to get them in alignment too. So do you have the skills necessary to gain alignment? I don't know. I know this. If there's a lack of alignment, it hurts and it costs a lot. Just like your back and your car. Now we started the conversation around you. And so we said we're going to ignite the fire. And the first thing we talked about was a change continuum. Now don't forget, side note, you can be asking questions and Keith will be putting up on the screen all the different ways that you can ask questions or make comments. But people already asked some questions. So I believe that we already have a question about the change continuum. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the question?
We've got a question. This came in by email. I understand what the change continuum is, but how do I use it?
Okay, good one. Good one. How do I use it? On a side note, if Jeff looks like Santa Claus, it's because he plays Santa Claus.
That's right.
You? There's a cool thing in Northern Nevada called the Polar Express. Northern Nevada used to be trains all over Northern Nevada because we had mining. If you ever see the TV show Bonanza, right where the map catches on fire, that's where we are. And they had mining. And so they take this old railway and they do Polar Express Christmas. And Jeff's one of the Santas, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's like when he came in today, I was like, Santa Claus has come. It's because he's getting ready to play the part of Santa Claus. That was an ADD moment, just so all of you know. It was total ADD. Because I saw him on the screen, I was like, hey, it's Kris Kringle. That's awesome. Anyways. All right.
So
question about the change continuum.
Yeah, how do we use the change continuum?
How do we use the change continuum? All right, here we go. So the change continuum, most of us, you and me, we got a challenge. The challenge is we're pretty good. Why is that a challenge? Well, follow me. You're an executive leader. I'm an executive leader. I own companies on both sides of the North American border, and I've done projects all around the world. I'm an executive leader. Okay, that's the bottom line. And I got the cachet, the pedigree, and the awards to prove it. I'm an executive leader. Now, I'm not saying that in arrogance. I'm just saying I'm an executive leader. But I got a problem. Just like you, you're an executive leader. You're not a director because you were no good. You're a director because you're pretty good. Just like I made it to executive leadership because I'm pretty good. But pretty good is actually a challenge. Pretty good is actually a stumbling block sometimes. Why? Because when change happens around us, we're reluctant to change. Why are we reluctant to change? Because we're pretty good. Why the hell should I change? I'm pretty good. How do you think I got in this chair, man? I got in this chair because I was pretty dang good. And here's the other caveat. I don't know how to change. What do you mean? Well, nobody ever taught me how to change. I figured out a way, either through my professional education or through life experiences, I figured out a way to win. And I won and I won and I won, and I got in the director's chair or the executive leader's chair. But then the world changes around me. All of a sudden, there's 6 generations in the workplace. All of a sudden, I've got all kinds of stuff in my portfolio that I didn't usually have when I was going to school or I was coming up in the ranks. And all of a sudden, the world went schwang, which is the international sound for what the hell just happened. And because in school, they didn't teach me how to change, and because in professional workshops and seminars, they probably didn't teach me how to change, I don't know what the heck to do with all that. So the change continuum to the person who sent the email in is a practical, sequential, step-by-step approach to changing that I would suggest if you follow, the likelihood of change occurring increases significantly. I see a skill that I want to acquire, I have a process for acquiring it. Someone points out a deficiency on my performance, I have a process for rectifying that. The world goes swang around me, I have a process for adapting. I'm not trying to change, I'm training to change, which implies that I have a plan, which implies that I have a sequential step-by-step, which implies that it might take a few attempts to actually change. The change continuum is a sequential step-by-step process that increases the likelihood that personal change will come to fruition. But your question was about how do I use it practically? So here's what I would do first. Let's say there's a problem. There's something I need to fix. I get angry. I blow up at people. Or, I'm procrastinating. Or I'm not very organized with my time or whatever. The first thing I would do is check. I'd sit down with myself and say, okay, am I really serious about this? Or is it just one of those things that I'm giving lip service to? Am I really serious about putting in some change? Willingness. Willingness would manifest itself in me talking to somebody about it. Willingness would manifest itself in me writing a book or whatever, or reading a book, I'm sorry. So the first step is checking your own heart, willingness. Then I would take that thing, Mr. or Mrs. Questioner via email, I would take that thing and I would go research. Education. I'd go to the University of Google. I'd go to the University of Yahoo. I'd go to the University of whatever your search engine is. And I would type in that thing so I could learn more about it. And I would take 15 minutes a day for the next 2 weeks and I would learn about it. Not an hour, not 3 hours, not 9 hours, just 15 minutes. Education. One of the biggest mistakes that directors and executive leaders make is they move directly from willingness, we got to get this damn thing fixed, to action. Skipping over education and understanding. So then we build a plan to take action based on everything we know right now, which will probably lead to what? The exact same results we're getting right now. So we must go get more knowledge. There's some director that's out of the 25 directors that are participating in this program, 24 out of the 24 others of them, one of them is doing what you need to do. So education might be posting it in the forum. Education might be posting it in the Facebook page. Education might be putting them in the chat box right now. Asking the question, how is somebody handling this? But will your arrogance of being pretty good prevent you from doing that? I've got to come up with it all myself. Okay, great. And you'll probably get the exact same answer you did 2 weeks ago. So education, 15 minutes a day. So to the person that asked the question, I would take that thing that you want to get better at, and for 15 minutes for 2 weeks, 15 minutes a day for 2 weeks, I would go research that. But that in and of itself is not enough. So I come every day, I'm researching 15 minutes a day. I'm not watching the monkey on the pig run around on YouTube. The time that I spend doing that or reading the football scores or whatever, I'll put it into researching. Then I got to take that information and I got to understand it. Any of you ever involved in athletics? I used to coach the high school and college level. And it would always amaze me that you get these youth coaches that would come to a clinic that we were putting on. They would get a little bit of the information and then they would try to go and implement it with their young people, even if they were high school students. And it would fail. And then they would say the stuff that we tried to teach them sucked. Well, you know what? Not one of them ever called me. They sat in a 1-hour workshop and never tried to get more information. So was it on me or was it on them at the coach's clinic? It's on them. They didn't understand. They took an hour talk and tried to go implement it. Understanding the information. How do I understand? I would write a little bit about it. I'd read a little bit about it. I'd talk a little bit about it. I would think a little bit about it and I'd try it. Because that's going to give me a deeper understanding. Then I build my plan of action. Look at that. I go get educated. I try to then understand it to a greater degree, even if that means that when I read that posting from the guy who's the director of public works in Mobile, Alabama, and I call him. Hey, I read that thing on the APWA website, the cool thing you did. How did you do it? What were the nuances? What were this? What was that? What was this? What was that? And then you take those concepts and mold them to your needs. Now you really understand it. You don't just take it and implement it. So I don't jump straight from willingness to action plan, even though that's what most of us do. You bend over to tie your shoe. You can't because you have to hold your breath because you've gotten a little out of shape. And you say the next morning, I'm going to go start working out. And then it never works out. Why? Because you didn't go get some education, some knowledge, some understanding so you can implement a new plan. Remember, we're not trying to change, we're trained to change the person that sent the email in. And then I take that plan, clearly defined objectives, clearly defined timelines, clearly defined action steps, and I put it on paper. And I give it to at least 3 people. I would take the plan, give it to 3 people. Why 3 people? To hold me accountable. Give me insight, give me wisdom. Then I would regularly check in with those people to figure out, are we having success? Are we doing well? Is that plan working? So what does that look like? Well, that might be once a month. That means once a quarter. That might be once a week, depending on the intensity of the change. So practically speaking, that's what I would do. That's how I would use the tool. Identify something you want to change. Go learn as much about it as you can. 15 minutes a day for 2 weeks. Really understand it, write it, read it, hear it, think it, talk it, do it. Take that new knowledge to help you build your action plan. Take the action plan, give it to 3 people. Then regularly review the plan to make sure it's working. Now, side note, that's the same thing you could use in a department, the same thing you could use in a community. Why won't most of you do that? Because you're pretty good. That's why, Jeff. Because you're pretty good. And you'll feel it necessary to horsepower it on your own. And you'll say to yourself, why do I need that? Well, imagine if you could do that regularly and it just became a part of what you do. See, there's no safety and security in staying the same. None. No safety and security in status quo. There's only safety and security in adapting, overcoming, and changing. Changing. All right. Any questions coming in?
Not so far.
Okay, come on now. This is really, really boring if you don't ask any questions. Your mid-level leaders, there was question after question after question, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
They were Facebook, they were chatting and Twitter and this and that. They were asking questions. So you can ask your question on Facebook. Facebook/building the public sector. Or you can ask your question on Twitter. And the handle is @buildingps. Or you can text in your question, 775-230-4535. Or you can email in your question, questions@thechangingpoint.com. Or you can put your questions in the chat box, your questions or your comments. Oh, side note, what I always say is this. If we don't get any questions at 45, in other words, 45 minutes in, then we just shut it down. Because what's the point? I'm not going to sit here and rattle on if there's no questions. So 20 minutes to go if you got some questions. Now, at the beginning of this week, I asked you to do a survey. Now, I had introduced the survey in the teaching session, but I asked you to do a survey. I called it the Leadership History Survey. The whole premise here was that somehow the leadership approaches you utilize today came from somewhere back there. I call it looking back to move forward. Somewhere back there, the leadership approaches you utilized were created. Like Jeff, who was a leader in your life that made a significant difference?
Well, high school English.
Okay.
Mrs. Cox.
Mrs. Cox.
Mrs. Cox.
And why did Mrs. Cox have such an impact?
She held me to a high standard, and wouldn't accept anything less than that standard. It was a very important lesson. Learned how to write well. God knows how many years ago. But Mrs. Cox did that by setting a standard. She wouldn't accept a paper that had any misspellings.
Wow.
We all had dictionaries. That's before spell check. And so she expected us to use them. If she found a misspelled word or some punctuation, she'd circle it, she'd hand the paper back. You had to turn it in perfectly.
Wow.
You learned pretty quick.
She held a high standard?
Held a high
kept that
standard,
standard.
and maintained it.
So that personal experience has stayed with Jeff some 30, 40 years later, whatever it was. Well, the same is true with you, good and bad. Because I'm sure Jeff could relate to me some negative experiences that he had with leaders in his formative years and later that maybe wasn't so great. The whole point of this thing is looking back to move forward. Now, how does it manifest itself today? Well, we're going to go through the questions and try to bring it to today and how it could have an impact. But I know this, you can't move forward if you don't know how you became the leader you are. Now, for some of you, your leadership style has organically been created. What do you mean? Well, those Miss Cox experiences, where it just kind of, people impacted you informally and formally, and it just kind of over a period of time, boom, you became the leader you are. Others of you went to school for it. Maybe you were in the military, or maybe at the college that you attended, you were in some kind of leadership group, or you're in your faith organization. You've been trained up to be a leader. So whether it's intentionally created your leadership style or organically your leadership style developed, the question really is the leadership style or the approach you're using the one the times require? That's what matters, not how you got here. The how you got here helps us so that we can move forward. You ever wonder why you sit in a meeting and you have no reason not to like the person, but you just don't like them? Don't like their style, don't like their approach, don't like their words, don't like their demeanor, you just like them? I bet you it resides somewhere in these questions. So I'm going to go through the leadership history survey. I'm going to unpack a little bit of what it could mean. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
No.
Jeff.
Okay,
We'll
so-
stop that and go to a
Yeah,
question.
exactly.
Go.
This is from the chat box. Want you to expand on getting the best out of everyone by creating a culture to accomplish this.
All right, so that's a big question, right? That's not something I'm going to answer in 2 seconds. But I would say this. I would say that alignment, organizational alignment, when people are aligned with the goal and their role and what winning is, helps to move that alignment. Now, it's funny because over the next 13 weeks, it will take to answer your question, right, Jeff?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? It'll take 13 weeks to answer your question. Read it to me one more time.
Expand on getting the best out of everyone by creating a culture to accomplish this.
Right. In today's changing times, this arrow makes a lot of choices and decisions on their own. Oh, that arrow right there. I didn't say the arrow won't come to work. The arrow will come to work. There's no doubt about the arrow coming to work. They got mortgages to pay. And in some regions, jobs are not plentiful. They'll come to work. The question is, will they give you their time? Will they give you their talent? Will they give you their energy? And will they give you their all? That's the question. So I, as an executive leader, in my opinion, have to get this person in alignment with where we're going. In the past, I could demand alignment. In the past, I could intimidate alignment. In the past, I could bark alignment, shout alignment, fear alignment. They would get in alignment. Shut your freaking mouth and get in alignment. That doesn't work anymore. Because here's what they say. Kiss my butt, I'll file a grievance. Kiss my butt. I'll just perform just enough to standard, and I'll give you attitudinal barrier, and I'll make your life a miserable hell. Right? Because times have changed. So in my opinion, we have to create organizational alignment through the 4 key parts of performance. Now remember, it's going to take me 13 weeks to teach you how to do this. But here's the basics of it. When people know the goal, and that goal is compelling, meaningful, has purpose, and is clearly articulated, regularly, passionately evangelized in the department. When people know what their role is, there's clarity of role, and the role is clarified on a daily basis through proper motivation approaches, good delegation skills, and the like. And people know what winning is, why do we exist, and how do we measure if we're any good at it. Then we start to create the culture that is these dark lines. These dark lines. And then when we take into consideration, this is a long answer.
Yeah.
This isn't a little 2 bullet point thing, right? Then we have to take into consideration the 4 components to performance. People, systems. People and systems are critical. Strategies. And then clients, customers, citizens, whatever you want, the people we serve. Now, if you were going to draw a visual of that, it would look something like this. Because I think she used, or he used, the term main thing, right? What did they say?
Expand on getting the best out of everyone by creating a culture to accomplish this.
Right.
Yeah.
So, this is the main thing. It's the main thing that you do. Public works. People. Systems. Strategies. Citizens. Or, yeah, citizens is fine. These things have to be in alignment. With that main thing, the reason you exist. We're going to talk about organizational pride. Organizational pride, I'm running out of crap. Organizational pride is one of these that helps keep people in alignment. Clear-cut objectives or goals help keep people in alignment. People clearly understanding their role and what winning look is keep people in alignment. People feeling valued and important, having a say, self-determination, self-reliance helps keep people in alignment. Now, you could use the term culture. You could also use the term contextual pressure, context. When I create contextual pressure, I'm more likely to get alignment. But ultimately, in today's day and age, the arrow that's going this way, if I want to get them going that way, then there are some basic competencies necessary to create an environment for that to happen. That environment is then perpetuated by your direct reports and all the way out to the people furthest away from you. What are some of the key words to that? People got to know the goal. People got to know their role. People got to know what winning is. You have to understand the 4 components to performance: people, systems, strategies, and users. And then all of that has to align. Now, how you do that are the 5 competencies that we're going to unpack in the following 13 weeks. Those 5 competencies that we're going to unpack. But really, what does it boil down to? Goal, role, winning. Do I have systems and processes, protocols and procedures and policies that clearly articulate the goal to people, clearly articulate the role to people, clearly articulate what winning is? And do I have mechanisms in place for when that arrow is going this way? And I will tell you, the number one way to make all that a reality is have an all-out commitment to the development of informal leaders. Because as the leaders get better at doing the things I just said, the culture is created. Why is there some companies that win all the time? Why is there some sports teams that win all the time? Why are there some departments, Clark County, Washington, Pete Capel? Why is there some departments that are some of the best in the country no matter what? Because they've created organizational culture. Now, I don't like using that term necessarily because it's been overused and it's almost trite. Here's the simplicity of it is get everybody in alignment. Because when everybody's in alignment, culture will create itself, right? When I'm aligned with your time, talent, and treasure, and your time, talent, and treasure is aligned with mine, and when that's aligned with the organization's main reason for being, then something special happens. Sometimes your talent and treasure and my talent and treasure can be aligned, but they're not aligned with the organization, right? We've had that. You've had a group of employees that they were aligned, but they weren't aligned with what everybody else was doing. So, for me, whether you want to call it culture or whether you want to call it alignment, I can't be successful in the 21st century. I can't do more with less if I don't have that force multiplier in play. Force multiplier, that thing that gets the best out of people. If I don't have that thing that gets the best out of people, the environment, the context, in play, I'm not going to make it, man. I'm not going to get people's best time, talent, treasure, their all. They will come to work. They have mortgages to pay. They'll come to work, but they won't give their best. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, back to the leadership history survey. And you know what? Just ask a question. I'll stop whatever I'm doing to answer it. Oh, and just on a final note on that. At the end of the 13 weeks that we have left, tell me if your question got answered. Because it will take 13 weeks to answer your question. Take 13 weeks to answer your question. Of learning, right? Of learning, dialoguing. Okay, leadership history survey. Oh, don't forget, you can ask a question just like they asked a question. And Keith will cycle through all the ways. Oh, we have a question.
We just got one.
Damn it. No, I'm just kidding.
No. This is
Go
good.
ahead.
This is good.
Good.
All right. This is by text.
By text?
Yes.
Give me the area code and we'll figure out who they are. No, don't do that.
Okay. I assume leadership is mostly inherent based on early life experiences. Can leadership really be taught and learned by those that just don't have it?
I hope you're not in a position of executive leadership. I'm holding it for dramatic pause or dramatic effect. If you think leaders are born, you're a fool. Yeah, you're a fool. Because what you might define as a leader ain't a leader no more, man. The ability to charismatically lead people through the rhetoric and words. We don't buy that anymore. The ability to come up with a great idea. That's not enough anymore. Leadership, in my opinion, is a learned skill. Just like any other learned skill. You can learn the skills of leading today. Who's more effective as leading today? The guy who can talk or the guy who can listen? The guy who can listen. Who's more effective at leading today? The lady who comes up with a brilliant idea or the lady who knows how to facilitate the development of ideas amongst the stakeholders to get deeper buy-in and more effective solutions? The latter, not the former. Do I think that there are certain attributes or qualities that might lend you to leadership? Yeah, but they've changed. Do you know that the guy is actually in a disadvantage in the 21st century? Because the guy's leadership approaches typically is not what the times require. The time requires somebody who knows how to lead and follow all in the same sentence. The times require someone who can collaborate, who can play nice in the sandbox. Now, you might not like that, but it's true. We're tired of the autocratic leader that barks orders and thinks they know everything. We're tired of that. We don't want that. Remember, I didn't say people wouldn't come to work. They'll come to work. But if you want to get people's best. So the premise of your question, I assume, is that, hey, leaders are born. Do you really think it can be learned? I think you have to learn it today because there's been a fundamental shift in life. It's a user-driven society where the follower wants to have more of a say than the leader. We're in a society where people want to have self-determination and self-reliance. That's not true. People are apathetic. Bull crap. People aren't apathetic. If you provide them a vehicle that's comfortable for them, they get off their big fat couch and get a ton done. The problem is you're probably not creating the environment for that talent to come out. So, read the question to me one more time.
I assume leadership is mostly inherent based on early life experiences. Can leadership really be taught and learned by those that just don't have it?
Leadership, by my definition, is the ability to take a bunch of different people from a bunch of different backgrounds with a bunch of different talents, experience, and interests and move them towards a common goal. To me, that is leadership. In the past, that was accomplished through an autocratic approach. Even before that, it was accomplished by, if you don't get in alignment, I'll kill you. Now, some of you in your autobiography, that was the leadership approach that you experienced. But that leadership approach will fall flat today. That leadership approach will be met with a crossing of the arms, a flipping of the head. That leadership approach will not get the most out of people. So, we've seen an evolution of leadership approaches throughout history. So, based on your premise, the only people that could lead are the people that were born with the capacity. But if times are always changing and leadership approaches have to change accordingly, then nobody would be able to lead. Because you couldn't predict the DNA necessary to lead. I think it's learned. All of that was a long-winded way to say, I think it's learned. I think it is a learned trait. And the beauty of that is, because it's a learned trait, anybody can lead. You have a bunch of people in your department, sir or ma'am, that have no formal title, but trust me, they're leading every day. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. All right, did I answer that?
I think so. I think the spirit here, though, is that if leadership is a learned trait, then we need to intentionally set about to bring our leaders to that point. We need to intentionally create the leaders that we want to have in our groups. If we're just letting the oldest person in the group lead because they've been here the longest, that may not be the best way to select leaders.
Or the one that's most vocationally competent. Or, you know, that's what happens a lot of times is we just take the guy who's the best at driving the plow and make him in charge of all the guys that drive plows. Or the person who's in charge of, the supervisor becomes a supervisor because they're the most vocationally competent. But vocational competency and leadership competency are two different things. Vocational competency, leadership traits that the times require. Do you even know what they are? If you do, then that's what you're hiring to be the supervisor, not necessarily that I'm really good at my task. Just because I'm really good at my task doesn't mean I'll be really good at leading. And I think that's an excellent point that you're making, Jeff. Yeah. And I think you're also saying that we're intentional about the development of our own leadership.
Yes,
that
exactly.
We're constantly, like here's a way to say it, that we're constantly checking and saying, are my leadership approaches still relevant? Remember, 6 generations in the workplace. There's a high likelihood that your leadership approach might not be relevant to one of them, or 2 of them, or maybe even 3 of them. Got to be a lot more sophisticated today to be a leader. And I do think you can learn it all. And why do you think that? Because I've learned it. I've learned it. I've learned how to lead a group of 5, and then I learned how to lead a group of 20, and then I learned how to lead a group of 100, then I learned how to lead a group of 1,000, then I learned how to lead people I've never seen. Then I learned how to lead people that I've never seen and will never speak my language, and I'll never speak theirs. How about that one? And I have no relatability to their life experience, and yet I can lead them. Every step along the way, I had to learn the next step. Every step along the way. And then, just to piss me off, the world changed. So half of that crap that I had learned wasn't any good anymore. Yeah, world, I'm pissed off at you. Because I had to all of a sudden learn stuff. Because I'd gotten pretty good, and then the world changed. So all of that long-windedness to say this, yes, I believe it can be learned. Over and over and over again, I think it can be learned. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I have something on Facebook.
Facebook!
It's kind of interesting.
Facebook!
When we first get together here as a group at the beginning to talk, I imagine it is important to have a good start. And that's in quotes. Have you heard from organizations in the past who have approached this in a certain way that was more successful than others?
Yeah, I have. Encinitas, California, a ton of other departments. Gainesville, Florida, Fredericton, New Brunswick, up in Canada. The departments that saw transformational change. What were the key ingredients? One, the director set the tone. Encinitas, California, the director literally went to the different meetings with the different employees. The director posted his or answers to all the questions and all the assignments for everyone to see. The director set the pace and said, we are doing this program. And then there was accountability. We're doing it. Where directors said, you guys go do it and I'll check in with you. No, didn't work. So that was one key. Second key, dialogue between the sessions. That there was deep dialogue. So the directors and the mid-level leaders were using my commentary as a launching point for a broader conversation. Hey, what do you think about what Ian said? Hey, what did you think about this? Hey, what do you think about that? And they were having ongoing dialogue about something that was said. They were using it as a springboard in their individual group meetings, their individual sub-departmental meetings. And the 5 guys out at the water treatment plant, they were talking about it. And somebody that was a supervisor was talking about it. And then finally, I've found that the departments have courageous conversations about why you're doing it. Hey, we're doing this training program. Make sure your ass is over there in the room at this time. Well, what is it? Don't worry about it. Just get your butt in the room. Well, what is it? Doesn't matter. Let's get over there. Why are we doing it? Who cares? So-and-so above so-and-so above so-and-so said we're doing it. That's crap. It's crap. Why would anybody participate in that? But when somebody sat down and had a courageous conversation, we're doing this program because we identified that we've got to grow in some areas as an organization. So we're going to go get this program to help us grow. And that growing starts with me, the executive leader. I have to grow. Think about that. When the executive leader stands up and says, I have to grow, so I'm going to this program, and I'm going to have all of you do it along with me. Because I got to get better at this, this, and this. That's a courageous conversation. And it makes frontline employees and mid-level leaders take note. Whoa. That's different than sending us just to a room. And then you start to act as a catalyst for conversations that are important. When you do that, the whole dynamic changes. So one, it all comes from the top. The director sets the tone. The director shows that they're a participant in the program. 2, I forgot what number 2 was. What did I say? Now you're not even paying attention. You're thinking about being Santa Claus. Come on, man.
That was,
I only did that for him to pay attention. 2, you got to talk about it in between. See, I'm just testing it. You got to talk about it in between. You can't just, the session and then nothing and then you talk about it in between. In your work groups, in your small groups, out at your different facilities, in your work crews, whatever it is. And then finally, you explain why. Why the hell are we doing this? We have got a lot to do around here. Those 3 things, I think, were consistent for a good start. Now, some of you started literally 2 days before the program started. So you're catching up. You're having to go around. But if I was the director or executive leader, I would go around and explain to everybody why we're doing it. And then I would say that I was personally doing it and that I would be going around every week and talking to people about it and having everyone else talking about it as well. In the hands of a thoughtful leader, this can be a great tool for departmental transformation. We've seen it over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. We've seen it. And that's why APWA, APWA, our partner in this, they don't put up crap just to put up crap. And they say it, best program in the industry. If you take it seriously, if you do the 3 things I just said. Yes, go ahead.
I've been in that situation where I was a leader, the executive leader of a human resources or a human services organization, and I would go off to a seminar. I'd go spend a day or a weekend or whatever at a seminar, and I'd come back with great ideas. And when I'd meet with my supervisors and say, okay, here's what I want you to do, and try to be excited about it, they were, okay, flavor of the month.
Right.
And the wonderful thing about this, and to make sure you've got that great start, is the whole department gets to go to the seminar. You're all hearing the same thing, and
Well, you're all hearing the same concepts
same concepts
to their level of authority.
to the proper level of authority.
Right.
But it's not just a top-down, here's the flavor of the month thing that I went to a seminar and heard about for an hour or 4 hours or a day or whatever it was. This is pretty intense. And so that approach of conversation, of meeting between, of continuing that dialogue is really, really important. I think that's one of the advantages of this program.
And I agree, and we've seen it. I mean, Jeff has been involved with these APWA programs from its inception, and we've literally now are up to hundreds of departments. We've had, well, I guess not 200. I guess we're at like 170 or something like that. I know we've had 23,000 public works professionals go through the various programs. And they're always different but the same. They're always the same but different. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes, depending on the departments that are going through, they take a different, right? They're organic that way. But the consistency of all the departments that have had success, all the departments that have had sex, all the departments that have had success are those three things. Now, it's funny. The ones that haven't had the success to that degree, it was whatever was the antithesis of that. The director wasn't involved. They didn't talk about it in between, and they never explained to everybody why they were doing it. Even with that, though, we still have pockets of success. What do you mean? 2 or 3 people here, 2 or 3 people there, 4 or 5 people here, a small group there. There's still individual success, but not the whole departmental success. So those were the 3 key ingredients. All right, look, we've only got 6 minutes left.
And we have one other comment
quick.
that I think is kind of interesting, to talk about the 6 generations. There's some confusion about what does that mean? What are the 6 generations?
Okay, let's talk about it, and then I got to get to these things, but yeah. So 6 generations, you stop and think about it. Stop and think about it. You might have on your team a 20-year-old. You might have on your team a 35-year-old. You might have on your team a 48-year-old. You might have on your team a 58-year-old, and you might have on your team a 63-year-old or a 67-year-old. You might. Each one of those ages fit into a range, right, Jeff? They fit into a range, and those would be generations. You, for the first time, might have a 19-year-old and a 64-year-old working for you.
And trying to work together. Say you got a parks department, and you got a seasonal staff. You got some 19-year-old kid, and you got some guy that's been with you for 33 years who's been putting off retirement, right? And then you got everything in between. Now, it's funny, that 19-year-old kids understand, that 19, 20, 24, 25-year-old young person's understanding of team and pride and work ethic might be fundamentally different than that 63-year-olds, 59-year-olds, 62-year-olds. Hierarchy, organizational structure, authority, completely different. And then you got everything in between that. So, and if you look in our communities, we got 7 generations in our communities, and it's going to be more. Because people are living to 90, 92, 93, 95. So it's within the realm of reasonableness to think in your community over the next 25 years, you're going to have a large pocket of people over the age of 80, and you're going to have 13-year-olds that think they're 25. All rolling around in the same town. Never been in the history of mankind. You think you're going to be able to lead all those people the same way? Come on now. As they say on, what is that football show? Come on, man. What's that football show I watch? It's on Fox. I think it's on Fox.
Fox or ESPN.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Hey, I got to get to this. Do you have something else for me?
Nope,
Good.
we're good
I
right
got to
now.
get to this. The leadership history survey, I only want you to, just in the few seconds that we have left, pay attention to 2 questions. I mean, I want you to look at them all, and I'll send you a little note, and it'll unpack the survey of what it could mean, but the two I want to unpack before we leave. Question number 9 and question number 10. So question number 9 was, who's your best boss? Why? What leadership qualities did they exhibit? Question number 10, who's your worst boss? What leadership qualities did they exhibit? Here's the funny thing about those 2 questions. Find out from your direct reports the answer to those 2 questions. Not the name, best boss, worst boss. The qualities. And you will find out immediately how they want to be managed and what they will absolutely not tolerate. Every time you act like their worst boss, they equate you to their worst boss. Every time you act like their best boss, awesome. You want to know how they want to be managed? Find out their answer. See, this is one of those examples I was using, Jeff, a moment ago of how we could create dialogue, right? Because everybody took the leadership history survey, or at least the directors and emerging leaders took the leadership history survey. So you could be talking about the responses and the answers and what they could mean. How about you? Who's your best boss and why? So here's what I challenge you to do over the next week. I challenge you to track down your best boss, your best leader that you ever had. I challenge you to call them. I challenge you to send them an email. I challenge you to go see them. Who was your best boss? Now, why would I challenge you to do that? This is an exercise I want you to do. 1, gratitude. Today's leader must exhibit gratitude. We are fed up with leaders that don't thank anybody for anything. So you know that there was somebody that made a significant impact in your life. You'd be a sorry excuse for a human being if you don't thank them. You might make their day, you might make their week, you might make their week, you might make their month, year, life. 2nd, humility. We are fed up with leaders who are going around saying they're doing it all on their own. The exercise forces you to stop and remember that you need other people. That it was other people that put you where you're at, and moving forward, it'll be other people that'll keep you where you're at or elevate you. Humility. And then finally, after you talk to that person, after you share with that person the difference they made in your life, you walk away from that conversation and you remember this. You have the opportunity to be number 9 to somebody else. Number 9. Yeah, the answer to question number 9, who's your best boss? Because I guarantee you this, you're somebody's number 9, you're somebody's number 10. So I want you to call the person or go see the person that made a significant difference in your professional life for the 3 learnings that I just articulated. Worst boss. Don't call them. But I do want you to look at the attributes and qualities they exhibited and then ask yourself, do I do that ever? It is funny how powerful people can imprint on us. I will never be like my dad. And then, of course, I become like my dad. And you've done the same. So whether you want to look introspectively, question number 9, question number 10, or you want to talk to your direct reports, hey, what were the qualities of your best boss? What were the qualities of your worst boss? Because when you hear the qualities of their best boss, you will hear from them exactly how they want to be managed. If they tell you the qualities of their worst boss, you'll know exactly what not to do. Period. And in this way, you have a better chance of getting them into alignment. Getting them into alignment. All right, Jeff, we got any more questions?
No, we're good.
Because we're at the end of our time. So that's your assignment. Next week. Now, Monday, no email. Because in the United States, it's Veterans Day. And in Canada, it's Remembrance Day. I do want to make a quick Veterans Day, Remembrance Day comment. Unlike most of you probably, unlike most of you that are participating, maybe some of you, but most of you probably were not born in this land, either United States or Canada. Most of you were born in this land, the majority of you, either in the United States or Canada. But unlike most of you, I was not born in this land. I was born in a foreign land. I was born in a land called Iran. And I was adopted, actually smuggled out of Iran as an infant. I was smuggled out of there by United States Air Force Senior Master Sergeant. Master Sergeant John W. Hill was his name. He served in the United States Air Force for 33 years, both in active duty and reserve, mostly of active duty. 28 years, I think, 29, 30 years of active duty. He smuggled me out, purchasing me for 2 cases of scotch on the black market, and made me his. Now, was he a great father? Probably not. But he gave me life. He was a hell of a military man, but maybe not always the greatest dad. We have a charity. It's called Let Them Be Kids. And some of you have Googled it and you know about it. And we give away playgrounds and skate parks and fitness parks all across North America. And in most of those instances, we honor fallen soldiers. Why? Because we love war? No, we hate war. One thing that Senior Master Sergeant John W. Hill taught me was this: we're strong, so there shouldn't be a war. He said, I do my job so there's not a war. Most of those playgrounds we name after fallen soldiers. Veterans Day is important to me because if a guy, and Remembrance Day in Canada, if a guy hadn't been willing to serve my country or a country, I wouldn't be here. All of those playgrounds that have been built and all of the programs that have been started and all the schools that we've started and all that stuff we've done with the good fortune that has been given to us would have never been a reality if a guy wasn't willing to serve. If you're one of those guys and gals that served, I honor you. I know on a very personal and real level what your service can mean to one human being. If you didn't serve, I strongly encourage you, if you're in the United States over this weekend, don't go buy a new mattress for the Veterans Day sale. Go find some vet and thank them. If you're in Canada, it's a little bit different because you combine Veterans Day and Memorial Day and call it Remembrance Day. And you remember those who died and those who served. And at 11 o'clock, at 11 a.m., you stand for 3 minutes of silence. In both instances, on either side of the North American border, I would say this: let us commit ourselves to building nations, building states and provinces, and building communities that would be worthy of those people and the sacrifices that they made to serve. And whether their sacrifice was 33 years like my dad, or their sacrifice was the ultimate sacrifice, let us commit ourselves to building communities that would be worthy of their sacrifice. Thank you to all of you that served. Have a great weekend. We'll check in with you on Tuesday. Take care, everybody.
Oh,